How far would you go to survive one more night? The wind howls across the empty plains as a lone ranch stands against the coming storm, lantern light flickering like a heartbeat about to fail, and inside, a hardened cowboy posts a simple notice, one line, one need, a cook, nothing more, or so he tells himself, until she appears at his gate, a widow, thin, exhausted, two children clinging to her worn dress, her eyes hollow but unbroken, and suddenly the air changes. Because this is no ordinary bargain. This is desperation meeting control. Hunger meeting power. He studies her, slow, unreadable. She does not beg. She does not break, and that unsettles him more than anything. The door opens, warmth spills out, but so does something dangerous, something neither of them expected, because once she steps inside, nothing on that ranch will ever be the same, and neither will he. The door closed behind her with a heavy thud, and the storm vanished into silence, so sudden it rang in her ears, broken only by the low crackle of fire and the slow, steady sound of his boots crossing the floor, deliberate, measured, each step carrying weight, control, and something else she could not name. She stood just inside the threshold, not moving, not trusting the warmth yet. Her fingers stiff around the worn handle of her bag, while snow melted down her sleeves and soaked into fabric. Already too thin to protect her, the children pressed close to her sides, small, quiet, watching him the way creatures watch something they do not understand but know can change everything. He stopped a few feet away, close enough now that she could see the rough line of stubble along his jaw, the weather in his skin, the cold still clinging to him despite the fire. His eyes moved over her slowly, not lingering where other men might, but taking in everything that mattered, the exhaustion, the trembling, the way she held herself upright anyway. And that was somehow worse, because it meant he saw too much. "You are freezing," he said, his voice low, even, not a question, not concern, just fact. She swallowed, nodded once, but did not step closer. The distance between them stretched tight, like something invisible pulling and resisting at the same time. He turned slightly, gesturing toward the fire. "Sit, warm up." The words were simple, but the way he said them left no space to refuse. Still she hesitated, pride rising like a last defense she could not afford. Then one of the children shifted, a small cough breaking through the quiet, and that decided it. She moved, slow at first, then quicker, drawn by the heat, lowering herself onto the edge of a wooden chair, her body stiff, ready to rise again if needed. He watched her the entire time, not stepping closer, not stepping away, just there, present, controlled, like a man used to waiting things out. "I saw your notice," she said finally, her voice rough from cold and something deeper. He nodded once, eyes narrowing just slightly. "Cook," he said, as if testing the word against her. She lifted her chin. "I can work." The answer came too fast, too sharp, and for a moment something flickered in his gaze, not doubt, not exactly, but interest, and that unsettled her more than anything, because she realized then this was not just about a job, not just about shelter. This was a man who measured people the way he measured land, slowly, thoroughly, deciding what they were worth before saying a word. The fire cracked louder, sending sparks upward, and in that brief flare of light, their eyes locked fully for the first time. No movement, no sound, just breath visible in the warm air between them. And something shifted, subtle but undeniable. Not trust, not yet, but recognition. Like both of them understood that whatever came next would not be simple, would not be safe, and would not leave them unchanged. Then he spoke again, quieter this time, almost to himself. "We will see about that." The fire snapped louder, but the warmth did not reach her bones fast enough. Not when his gaze still held her in place, measuring, weighing, deciding, and she felt it. That quiet pressure, the kind that did not force but did not yield either. "You said you can work," he repeated, slower now, stepping closer, not enough to touch, just enough that she could feel the shift in the air, the heat of him cutting through the cold still clinging to her skin. She did not lean back, did not move, even as her breath caught for half a second. "I can," she answered again, softer this time, but steadier. His eyes dropped briefly to her hands, raw, cracked from cold, fingers still trembling despite her effort to hide it. Then to the children, thin, too quiet, watching everything. His jaw tightened, just slightly, before he looked back at her. "This is not a place for charity," he said, each word placed carefully, like he was setting terms on something far bigger than a meal or a bed. "If you stay, you work, and you follow my rules." The words should have felt like a warning, but something in the way he said them, low, controlled, almost protective, made them land differently, like a boundary meant to hold rather than push away. She lifted her chin again. Instinct, pride, survival all tangled together. "And if I do not?" A flicker passed through his eyes, something colder now. "Then you do not stay." Simple, final, the kind of truth that did not bend for anyone. Outside, the wind slammed against the cabin walls, a long, hollow sound that seemed to echo the choice hanging between them. She glanced toward the door for just a second, enough to remember the dark, the cold, the nothing waiting out there. Then back to him, closer now than before, close enough to see the faint scar near his brow, the way his breath slowed instead of quickened, controlled even in stillness. "You would send us back out there?" she asked, not accusing, just needing to hear it. His gaze did not waver. "If you cannot hold your ground in here, you will not last out there." The answer was not cruel, but it was not soft either, and that made it worse, because it meant he believed it, completely. The fire cracked again, a log shifting, and without thinking, she reached out to steady one of the children who had leaned too close to the heat, her hand brushing against the boy's shoulder, then pulling back quickly. But in that small movement, she lost her balance for half a second, just enough, and his hand came up, fast, steady, catching her at the elbow before she could fall forward. The contact was brief, firm, controlled, but it sent a sharp awareness through her, heat against cold, strength against exhaustion, and for a moment neither of them moved. His grip did not tighten, did not linger, but it did not release immediately either, like he was making sure she was steady, truly steady, before letting go. When he finally did, the absence of that contact felt just as real. She drew in a slow breath, steadying herself, and when she looked up at him again, something had changed, not in him, but in the space between them. "You have boys here," she said quietly. His expression shifted, barely, but enough. "You noticed?" It was not a question. She nodded once. "They need someone who can cook, keep a house, keep things from falling apart." His eyes narrowed just slightly. "And you need shelter." There it was, laid out plain. Need against need, survival against survival. No pretense left to hide behind. The storm outside howled louder, pressing against the walls like it wanted in, and in that moment she understood. This was not just about staying warm tonight. This was about what came after, what she would have to give, what she might lose, what he might take, and what neither of them was saying out loud. Then he spoke again, quieter, closer. "If you stay, it will not be temporary." The wind found every crack in the cabin, slipping through the wood in thin, icy threads that made the lantern flame tremble and stretch shadows across the walls, long and unsteady, like something watching, waiting, and still he did not move, standing there with that same quiet control. But something beneath it had shifted, something heavier now, something that did not leave when she spoke. "Not temporary," she repeated, slower, tasting the weight of it. Then she rose to her feet, the chair scraping softly behind her, a small sound that seemed louder than it should have been. The children looked up at her, uncertain, but she did not look at them. Not yet. Her eyes stayed on him, steady, sharper now. "If I stay," she said, her voice low but clear, "I decide how long." The words hung there, fragile and defiant all at once, and for the first time, his stillness broke, not in movement, but in the way his gaze narrowed, focused, as if she had just stepped onto ground he had not expected. Her to claim. Outside, the wind slammed harder, rattling the shutters, a deep hollow sound that pressed against the moment. "You think this is a place you pass through," he said quietly, stepping closer again, closing the distance by inches, not enough to touch, but enough that the air between them tightened. "You come in from that storm. You bring 2 children with you. And you talk about leaving like it is a choice you can afford." His voice did not rise, but it carried weight, the kind that settled deep. She did not step back, even as her pulse jumped. "I talk about not being owned," she answered, and there it was, the line drawn, clear and sharp. The fire popped again, a burst of light catching the tension in his face. Not anger, not exactly, Something more controlled than that. Something that held itself in check by force of will. He looked at her for a long second, then another, and the silence stretched, thick, deliberate, until it became its own kind of pressure. No one here is owned, he said finally, but his voice dropped lower, closer, until it felt like it belonged only to the space between them. But everything here has a place, and if you stay, you take yours. The words settled differently this time, not a demand. Not quite, but not a suggestion either. She felt it. That pull again. Not just survival now. Something deeper, more dangerous, because part of her understood exactly what he meant, and part of her resisted it with everything she had left. One of the children shifted behind her. A small, tired sound, an instinct moved through her faster than thought. She turned slightly, drawing them closer, her hand brushing their shoulders, grounding them, steadying herself through them when she faced him. Again, something had hardened. Then say it plain, she said. If I stay, what am I? The question landed clean, direct, no room to hide. His jaw tightened once, then eased, and for the first time since she had stepped inside, he exhaled slowly, as if choosing something. Careful, deliberate. You are what this place needs, he said, and the answer should have been simple, but it was not, because it left too much unsaid, because it left her standing there, caught between warmth and something that felt dangerously close to belonging. The wind screamed outside. The fire burned steady inside. And in that narrow space between them, she realized the truth he had not spoken, that staying here would not just keep her alive. It would change who she had to become, and she did not know if she could afford that, or if she had any other choice at all. The fire had settled into a steady burn, deep orange and gold, casting slow-moving light across the cabin walls. And for the first time since she stepped inside, the cold began to loosen its grip on her bones. But something else took its place, quieter, heavier, the kind of awareness that came when danger did not leave. It only changed shape. He moved then, not away, but closer to the table, reaching for a tin cup, pouring coffee with the same controlled motion he did everything. The scent filled the air, warm, grounding, real. He set the cup down within reach of her, not touching her, not looking at her when he did it, just placing it there like it was already decided. Drink, he said, simple, direct. She hesitated, just for a second, her eyes flicking from the cup to his face, searching for something, a catch, a cost, but there was none spoken, and that unsettled her more than anything, because it meant the cost would come later. She reached out slowly, her fingers brushing the edge of the metal, the heat biting into her skin, almost too much after the cold, but she held on, lifting it, bringing it to her lips. The first sip made her eyes close for a brief second, not by choice, but because her body reacted before her mind could stop it, warmth spreading through her chest, softening something she had held tight for too long. And he saw it. She knew he did, because when she opened her eyes again, he was watching her, not with hunger, not with pity, but with something far more dangerous. Understanding. You have not eaten, he said, not asking, stating. She shook her head once, the truth too simple to hide. He turned without another word, moving toward the stove, the sound of his boots quiet against the wood. The space he left behind felt larger than it should have, and she realized then how much of the room had been filled by his presence alone. The children shifted closer to the fire, their small hands reaching toward the heat, and she pulled them in. Instinctively, her arms wrapping around them, holding them close, and for a moment, just a moment, she allowed herself to breathe, to feel the warmth, to feel safe. And that was when it hit her, sharp and sudden, the danger of it, because safety here came from him, from this place, from a choice she had not fully made yet. The wind howled again outside, but it sounded farther now, less immediate, like the world beyond the cabin had already begun to slip away. He returned with a plate, simple food, nothing grand, but more than she had seen in days. He set it down in front of her, closer this time, close enough that his hand brushed the table near hers, the distance between them no longer wide, just inches, and for a second, neither moved. The firelight caught in his eyes, reflecting something that was no longer just control. There was something else there now, something quieter, deeper, something that made her pulse quicken without her permission. Eat, he said again, softer this time, and she did, because she could not afford not to, but also because some part of her no longer wanted to refuse him, and that realization struck harder than the cold ever had. She kept her gaze down at first, focusing on the food, on the act of eating, but she could feel him there, could feel the way his attention did not leave, steady, grounded, present, and slowly, without meaning to, she looked up, meeting his eyes again, and this time, she did not look away. Something passed between them, not spoken, not defined, but real, a shift, small but irreversible. Like a line crossed without either of them stepping back. You said I would take my place here, she said quietly, her voice steadier now, strengthened by warmth, by food, by something else she could not name. His expression did not change, but his focus sharpened. I did, he answered, and she held his gaze, her next words coming slower, heavier. Then I choose to stay, but not because I have nowhere else to go. The air tightened again, the fire crackling louder in the silence that followed, and for the first time, it was not him setting the terms, it was her. The wind did not ease, it grew sharper, angrier, clawing at the cabin walls as if it meant to tear the place apart board by board. And sometime deep into the night the fire burned lower, shadows thickening, the warmth thinning just enough to remind them how fragile it all was. She woke before she meant to, not from sound, but from the absence of it, the quiet between gusts, the kind that pressed too hard against the ears. She lay still for a moment, listening, the children curled close beside her under borrowed blankets, their breathing soft, uneven, and for the first time in days, not shaking from cold, but her own breath stayed tight, shallow, because something felt wrong. Not danger she could see, but something. Shifting beneath the surface, she pushed herself up slowly, careful not to wake them, the floor cold beneath her feet as she moved toward the dim glow of the fire. And he was already there, seated near it, awake, as if sleep had never touched him at all, his silhouette solid against the low light, shoulders broad, unmoving, like he had been waiting for something, or someone. You do not sleep much, she said quietly, stopping a few feet away. His head turned slightly, not startled, just aware. Never when the storm sounds like this, he answered, his voice low, steady. She stepped closer without realizing it, drawn by the fire, by the presence of another person who understood that kind of vigilance. The log shifted, a soft crack, sparks rising briefly, lighting the space between them. You think it will pass? She asked. He did not answer right away, and that silence stretched long enough to feel like truth before he spoke. Storms out here do not pass. They take what they can, then leave what is left standing. The words settled heavy, and she felt them, not just about the weather, but about everything. Her gaze dropped briefly to the floor, then back up, and this place, will it stand? He looked at her then, fully, something sharper in his eyes now, something that held both certainty and warning. It has so far, but there was no promise in it, none at all. The fire dimmed further, and without a word, he reached for another log, feeding it into the flames, the movement, controlled, deliberate, and when he leaned forward, the light caught the lines of his face, the strain he did not show during the day. She saw it then, the cost of holding everything together, of being the one who did not break, and something inside her shifted again, quieter. This time, deeper, because she understood that kind of weight. You cannot hold it alone forever, she said before she could stop herself, the words softer than she intended, but they landed. He stilled for a fraction of a second, then continued, pushing the log into place. I have been, he replied, not defensive, just factual, and that made it harder to argue, harder to push back, because it meant he believed it. The silence returned, heavier now, filled with things neither of them said, but both felt. The fire grew stronger again, light returning, warmth spreading, and she stepped closer still, close enough now that she could feel the heat from him as much as from the flames. You do not have to anymore, she said, barely above a whisper, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold still. His hand paused against the log, his breath slowing, and when he looked up at her, something changed, not fully, not enough to trust, but enough to feel. Then a sound cut through it all, sharp, sudden. From outside, not wind, not wood, something heavier, deliberate. Both of them froze, the air snapping tight in an instant. His head turned toward the door, her body tensing without thought. Another sound followed, closer this time. Unmistakable footsteps in the snow. The sound came again, closer, heavier, pressing through the storm like it belonged there, not lost, not wandering, and the cabin seemed to tighten around it. The walls creaking, the fire snapping as if it felt it too. He was already on his feet before the second step finished, every movement precise, controlled, but faster now, sharper. She did not think. She turned, pulling the children behind her instinctively, her back straight despite the fear rising in her chest. "What is it?" she whispered. But he did not answer, his focus fixed on the door, listening, measuring. The wind howled louder, but beneath it, unmistakable, another step, then another, slow, deliberate, as if whoever was out there knew exactly where they were and was coming anyway. "Stay behind me," he said, his voice low but absolute, and something in it left no room for argument. Not control for its own sake, but protection, raw and immediate. She should have resisted, should have said something, anything, but she did not, because her body had already decided, moving when he moved, closing the distance between them until she was just behind his shoulder, close enough to feel the heat of him, the steadiness, the way he did not waver. The door rattled suddenly, not from wind, but from pressure, a force from the outside that made the wood groan. The children flinched, pressing closer, and she tightened her hold on them, her breath shallow, fast, but her eyes stayed forward, locked on him. He did not reach for a weapon, did not raise his voice. He simply stood there, solid, unyielding, like the storm would have to break against him first. "Whoever is out there, they are not turning back," she said, barely above a breath, and for the first time, he glanced at her, just a fraction, enough for their eyes to meet, and in that instant, everything else fell away, the storm, the sound, the fear. There was only that look, steady, grounded, and something else beneath it, something that held her in place more firmly than any command could. "Then we do not give them a reason to. Come in," he said quietly, turning back to the door, the words simple, but the meaning clear. "Hold the line. Hold this place. Hold each other." The wind screamed. The door shook again, harder this time, and she felt it. The choice closing in, not just about the storm, not just about the danger outside, but about this, about him, about what it meant to stand here beside him instead of running. Her grip on the children tightened, then loosened, and slowly, deliberately, she stepped forward, not behind him now, but beside him, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. He felt it instantly, his body shifting just slightly, not pushing her back, not pulling her away, but adjusting, making space without giving ground. "You said everything here has a place," she said, her voice steadier than she felt, her eyes forward, fixed on the door that threatened to break open at any moment. "Tell me where I stand." The words were not fear, not anymore. They were a choice, clear and undeniable. And for a second, he did not answer, the silence stretching as the door rattled again, louder, more urgent, until finally, without looking at her, his voice came, low, certain, "Right here." The words landed deep, heavier than anything he had said before, and in that moment, something locked into place between them, not fragile, not uncertain, but solid, chosen. Then the latch jerked violently, the wood splitting just enough to let a blast of frozen air tear into the cabin, and whatever was outside was no longer waiting. The door slammed shut again under his weight, the latch forced back into place with a sharp, final sound that seemed to echo longer than it should. And then, just like that, the storm reclaimed its voice, wind screaming across the cabin, rattling every board. But inside, everything fell into a heavy, unnatural quiet, the kind that comes after something shifts and cannot be undone. She did not move at first, her shoulders still close to his, close enough to feel the rise and fall of his breath. Slower now, controlled again, but not untouched. Not after that moment, not after the way they had stood there, side by side, choosing not to step back. The children clung to her, their small hands gripping fabric, grounding her in something real, something that had not changed, but even that felt different now, because she knew she was not standing alone anymore, and that knowledge settled deep, unsettling and steady all at once. He stepped away first, just one step, enough to break the contact, enough to remind them both of the space that still existed, that needed to exist. His hand moved to the door, checking it, pressing against the wood as if measuring its strength, then dropping, satisfied or not. She could not tell. "You are safe," he said. But the words came quieter than before, not a command, not even reassurance, just something placed between them, uncertain in a way he had not been earlier. She nodded, though she was not sure if the word safe meant what it used to. Anymore. The fire had burned lower, the light softer now, shadows stretching longer across the floor, and in that dim glow, everything felt closer, more exposed. She guided the children back toward the blankets, her hands gentler now, slower, lingering for just a second longer than necessary, as if she needed to feel them there, to anchor herself. When she turned back, he was watching her again, not as he had before, not measuring, not deciding, but something quieter, something that stayed, and, for a moment, neither of them spoke, the silence thick, heavy with everything that had just passed between them. "You stepped forward," he said finally, his voice low, almost thoughtful. She held his gaze, steady. "I did not want to stand behind you." The answer came without hesitation, and something in his expression shifted, not surprise, not exactly, but acknowledgement, slow and deliberate, like he was seeing her differently now. The fire cracked softly, a log settling, and she became aware again of the distance between them, small, but present, a space filled with something. Neither of them named, something that pulled and resisted at the same time. "You chose your place," he said, and this time, it sounded less like a rule, more like something accepted. She exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of that settle into her chest, knowing it could not be taken back, not by him, not by her. Outside, the wind howled again, but it sounded different now, sharper, carrying something else with it, a sound beneath the storm, faint at first, then clearer, a distant creak, like wood shifting under weight. Her head turned toward the door instinctively. His did too, both of them stilling at the same time, listening. The fire flickered low, the shadows deepening, and in that fragile quiet between gusts of wind, another sound came, slower, heavier, not at the door this time, but somewhere beyond it, moving, circling, waiting, and neither of them spoke as they realized at the same moment that whatever had come through the storm had not left. The sound outside did not fade. It settled, slow and deliberate, like something that had decided to stay, and inside the cabin the silence thickened again, heavier than before, pressing into every breath, every movement. He did not reach for the door this time, did not move toward it at all. Instead he stood still, listening, calculating, and that was when she saw it. Not fear, not hesitation, but recognition. Something in his posture shifted, subtle but undeniable, like he knew what waited out there, and that changed everything. "You know what that is," she said quietly, her voice cutting through the stillness sharper than she intended. His jaw tightened once, then eased, his gaze still fixed on the wall, as if he could see through it. "I know enough," he answered, but it was not enough, not for her, not anymore, because something inside her had already begun to turn, to shift, away from the place she had been standing since she arrived, the place where he decided and she endured. She stepped forward again, not toward the door, but toward him, closing the space until he had no choice but to acknowledge her presence, really acknowledge it. "You brought us here knowing something could follow," she said, not accusing, but not asking either. The words landed heavy, and this time, he looked at her fully, not guarded, not distant, but direct, and in that look, she saw it, the weight he carried, the choices already made before she ever knocked on his door. "I did not bring you here," he said, his voice low, steady, but something beneath it tightened. "You came, and I let you stay." The distinction mattered to him. She could see that, but it did not change what she felt, what she was beginning to understand. "You let us stay because you needed something," she said, softer now, but firmer, and his eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in focus. "And you think you did not?" The question turned back on her, but she did not flinch. "Not this time. I needed shelter," she said, "but I did not know I was stepping into something already in motion." The fire crackled low, the wind rising again, but neither of them looked away, because this was no longer about the storm, not entirely. This was about the truth sitting between them, unspoken until now. He exhaled slowly, his shoulders shifting just enough to release some of the tension he had been holding. This land does not stay quiet for long, he said, his voice quieter now, almost reflective. People come through. People watch. People wait for things to break. And when they do, they take what is left. His gaze flicked briefly toward the door, then back to her. I built this place so that would not happen. The words were simple, but the meaning beneath them was not. She heard it. The isolation, the control, the need to hold everything in place. Not just for himself, but for something more, something he had not named. You are not just protecting this ranch, she said slowly. Watching him closely, you are protecting something on it. The air shifted again, subtle but sharp, and this time, he did not answer right away, the silence stretching, heavy, until it became its own kind of admission. Her heart tightened, not from fear, but from realization. Because if there was something here worth protecting, something others would come for, then staying had never been just about survival. It had been stepping into a line already drawn, and she had crossed it the moment she said yes. Tell me what it is, she said, her voice steady, but her pulse loud in her ears. His gaze held hers, long, unyielding, as if weighing the cost of the truth. And when he finally spoke, it was quieter than anything he had said before. There is someone else here. The words fell into the space between them, changing it instantly, completely, and before she could ask, before she could move, a faint sound came from deeper inside the cabin. Not wind, not wood, but a small, uneven breath that did not belong to any of them. The sound came again from deeper inside the cabin, thin, uneven, a breath that struggled to stay quiet, and everything in her body went still as the truth settled in. There was someone here, hidden, kept, protected, and suddenly the storm outside felt smaller than the one rising between them. You did not tell me, she said, her voice low but sharp. Not fear now, but something stronger, something that pushed forward instead of pulling back. He did not deny it, did not soften it. His gaze held hers, steady. I was going to, he said, but the timing of it, the way it landed now, made it feel like something else entirely, like a choice already made without her. The wind howled louder, slamming against the cabin as if it meant to break in, but she barely heard it. Her focus locked on him, on the man who had offered shelter, control, something close to safety, and had kept this from her. Who is it? She asked, taking a step past him before he could answer. Instinct driving her forward now. Not waiting, not asking permission. His hand moved, fast but not forceful, catching her wrist just enough to stop her, the contact firm, controlled, and for a second, everything narrowed to that point. His hand around her, her pulse racing beneath his grip. You do not go back there, he said, his voice lower than before, but carrying something new, something closer to urgency than control. She looked down at his hand, then back up at him, her breath steadying in a way that surprised even her. You said I take my place here, she said, her voice quiet but unyielding. Then do not keep me in the dark. The fire flared suddenly, casting sharp light across both their faces, and in that moment, the tension between them shifted again, no longer just about survival, not just about shelter, but about truth, about trust, about the line between protection and control. His grip did not tighten, but it did not release immediately either, like he was weighing something heavier than before, something that could not be taken back once spoken. The breath came again from the back room, weaker this time, and she felt it, a pull she could not ignore. Someone needs help, she said, softer now, but no less certain, and something in his expression changed, not breaking, not fully, but cracking just enough to let something through, something that had been held too long. I know, he said, and the words carried weight, regret, responsibility. She stepped closer, not pulling away from his hold, but closing the distance until they stood almost chest to chest, her voice dropping to a whisper. Then let me see. The storm outside roared. The cabin creaked. The fire snapped. But none of it mattered now, not compared to this moment, this choice. His hand finally loosened, sliding from her wrist but not falling away completely, hovering there for a fraction of a second, as if reluctant to lose. That contact, his eyes searched hers, deep, steady, and for the first time since she had arrived, there was no control in it, only the weight of what came next. If you see this, he said slowly, his voice quieter than the storm, then you do not walk away from it. The words settled between them, final, absolute. not a warning, but a truth. She held his gaze, her heart steady now in a way it had not been before, because she understood this was the moment, not just about staying or leaving, not just about survival, but about choosing to step fully into whatever this place held, whatever he had been carrying alone, whatever waited in that room. And once she did, there would be no going back. She drew in a slow breath, the warmth of the fire, the cold of the storm, the presence of him all pressing in at once. And then she made her choice. "Take me there," she said, her voice clear, unwavering. And for a long second, he did not move, as if the entire world balanced on that one decision, before he finally turned toward the dark hallway and stepped forward. The hallway felt narrower than it should have, the air cooler, quieter, as if the storm had never reached this part of the cabin. And yet something heavier lingered here, something held too long in silence. He stopped at the door at the end, his hand resting against the wood, but not opening it. Not yet. She stood just behind him, close enough to feel the hesitation in his breath, slower now, deeper, like each inhale carried memory instead of air. "You can still turn back," he said, not looking at her, his voice low, stripped of command, stripped of control. She did not answer right away, because for the first time since she arrived, the choice felt real, not forced by cold or hunger or fear, but offered, placed in her hands. And that made it heavier. She looked past him at the door, then at his shoulders, at the weight he carried without asking anyone to share it. And slowly, she stepped forward, closing the space until her presence was no longer behind him, but beside him again. "I am not turning back," she said quietly. And this time, the words did not challenge him. They met him, steady, certain. His hand tightened slightly against the door, then eased, and finally, he pushed it open. The room beyond was dim, lit only by a small lantern that burned low, its flame barely holding on. And in the narrow bed against the far wall lay a young boy, no older than 10, his breathing shallow, uneven, his skin pale against the rough blankets. And suddenly everything made sense. The isolation, the control, the way he watched everything, the way he did not sleep. She stepped forward without thinking, drawn not by obligation, but by something deeper, something that had already taken root. She knelt beside the bed, her hand hovering for a moment before resting lightly against the boy's arm. Warm, too warm, and fragile in a way that made her chest tighten. "He has been like this," she began, but he answered before she finished. 3 days. The words were quiet, but they carried exhaustion, not physical, but something deeper, something worn down by waiting, by hoping, by holding on alone. She glanced back at him, really seeing him now, not just the man who controlled the space, but the one who had been standing in it alone, holding everything together for someone who might not even wake. "You should have told me," she said softly, not accusing anymore, just stating what had been missing. He met her gaze, and for the first time, there was no distance in it, no wall, just truth. "I did not know if you would stay." The honesty in it landed heavier than anything else he had said, and something inside her shifted again, final this time, because she understood this had never been about keeping her out. It had been about not risking losing her before she chose to stay. She turned back to the boy, adjusting the blanket, her movements careful, deliberate, as if she had already accepted what came with this, what she was stepping into. "He is not alone anymore," she said quietly, more to the room than to him. And when she stood, she did not step away. She moved closer to him instead, the space between them nearly gone, but not closed, not completely, just enough to feel, to acknowledge, to choose. His gaze held hers, steady, no longer measuring, no longer deciding, just there, present. And in that silence, something settled between them, not a bargain, not an agreement, but something stronger, something that did not need to be spoken to exist. Outside, the storm had begun to fade, the wind softer now, the first light of morning barely touching the edges of the world. And inside, for the first time, the quiet did not feel empty. It felt held, like something had been found instead of lost. And she realized then, some places do not ask you to stay. They simply become the place you cannot leave. Morning came slowly, not with warmth, but with a pale, quiet light that slipped through the cracks in the wooden walls and settled across the floor like something careful, something that did not want to disturb what had changed during the night. The fire had burned low to embers, a soft glow instead of flame. And the cabin felt different now, not empty, not tense in the same way, but still holding something beneath the surface, a memory of what had almost broken. She moved first, rising from beside the bed where she had not realized she had fallen asleep, her body stiff, her breath visible in the cool air. She pulled the blanket higher over the boy, her hand lingering just a moment longer than needed, checking, steadying, grounding herself in something real, something that had not slipped away behind her. She heard him shift, the quiet sound of boots against wood, slower than before, not because he was tired, but because there was no longer a need to move with that same edge of urgency. She did not turn right away. She did not have to. She could feel him there, the same presence, but changed, less like something that filled the space, more like something that stood within it. When she finally looked over her shoulder, their eyes met without tension snapping tight between them, without the immediate resistance that had once followed every glance. And yet the distance was still there, not gone, just quieter, shaped now by something chosen instead of forced. "You stayed," he said, his voice low, not questioning, not surprised, just acknowledging what had already become true. She turned fully then, resting one hand lightly against the edge of the bed. "I said I would." Her answer simple, but the meaning beneath it heavier than before, because now it was not about the storm, not about survival. It was about everything that came after. He stepped closer, not closing the space entirely, but not keeping it wide either, the kind of distance that allowed breath to move between them without breaking the quiet. The light from the window caught in his face, softer than firelight, revealing more than it hid, the lines of strain, the exhaustion, but also something steadier now, something that no longer stood alone. "You understand what that means," he said, and this time, it was not a warning, it was an offering. She held his gaze, steady. "I do," she answered, and for a moment, nothing moved, not the air, not the light, just that shared understanding settling into place, the kind that did not need to be spoken twice. One of the children stirred behind her, a soft sound, and she glanced back instinctively. Her hand already reaching, already adjusting, already belonging to that motion. When she turned back, he was watching her again, but differently, not measuring, not guarding, just seeing. And that changed the space more than anything else. Outside, the storm had passed, but the world it left behind was still cold, still uncertain. The land stretched quiet beyond the cabin, untouched but waiting, and inside, the warmth had not fully returned, but it no longer needed to fight alone. She stepped past him then, moving toward the small window, pushing it open just enough to let the morning air in. Sharp, clean, real, the kind that made you breathe deeper whether you wanted to or not. He watched her do it, the way she did not hesitate, the way she let the cold in without fear, because it no longer meant being alone, and something in his expression shifted again, quieter, deeper, not a release, but a beginning. And as the light grew stronger, touching the walls, the floor, the space between them, it became clear that nothing about this place was the same as it had been before she arrived, and nothing about either of them would be either, and yet, neither of them stepped away. The land stretched wide beneath a sky painted in slow fading gold, the sun sinking low across the prairie as if it had nowhere else to be, and for the first time in days, the wind moved gently, not as a threat, but as something that carried the quiet of what had passed. The ranch stood still against it all, weathered with catching the last light, no longer just a place that endured, but a place that held. She stepped out onto the porch, her boots pressing into the dry earth, her breath steady. No longer shallow, no longer searching for something to brace against. Behind her, the door opened without sound, and she did not need to turn to know he was there. The same presence, but not the same distance. Not anymore. The children's laughter drifted faintly from inside, softer now, alive in a way that filled the space without breaking it, and that alone told her everything had changed. She looked out across the land, the same horizon that had once felt endless and empty now settling into something else, something known, something chosen. "You could still leave," he said. Behind her, his voice low, not pushing, not pulling, just placing the truth where it belonged. she smiled, not turning right away, her gaze still on the fading light. I could, she answered, and the words held no weight of doubt, only clarity. She turned then, slowly, meeting his eyes, the same eyes that had once measured her, guarded every inch of space, now steady in a different way, open without losing their strength. But I am not going to. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full, filled with everything they had not said, everything they had already chosen without needing to speak it twice. He stepped closer, not hesitating now, not calculating the distance, just closing it until they stood within reach, the space between them no longer a barrier, but something shared. His hand moved, slow, deliberate, resting lightly at her back, not claiming, not forcing, but holding, grounding. A quiet promise made without words. She did not pull away, did not tense. She leaned into it, just slightly, enough to show she felt it, accepted it, chose it. The sun dipped lower, the last light stretching across them both, catching in the dust, the lines of their faces, the stillness of the moment. And in that quiet, everything settled, not perfect, not without cost, but real, earned, the kind of belonging that did not come from ease, but from staying when leaving would have been simpler. The wind moved again, soft against her skin, and she realized it no longer felt like something to survive. It felt like something to stand in. Together, he exhaled slowly, his gaze still on hers, as if making sure she meant it, as if committing it to memory, and she did not look away, because she did. She meant all of it. The land, the boy, the children, him. This place that had taken everything and given something back. Not what she expected, but something stronger, something that held. And as the last light slipped beneath the horizon, leaving only the quiet glow of dusk, she understood the truth that would stay long after the storm was gone. Sometimes the place that saves you is the one you choose to stay, and the person who lets you stay becomes the reason you never leave.